What's up, guys? Gary here with the next story. So we've got our notes, we've got our hat. Today we're going to be talking about a contract versus a covenant. Let's roll that intro and go. Okay, guys, so contract versus covenant, right? We're familiar with one of those terms, we're not really familiar with the other one too much. So let's talk about it today, why it matters, why should you care, do you care? Let's just dive right in. So, when talking about a contract versus a covenant, what we're talking about, to give it context, to give it a little framework for our discussion here, what we're really doing is we're talking about our relationship with God. Is it a contract or is it a covenant? So, the difference between the two is key, it is huge, and it's really important for if you believe that God is a good God versus if you believe that God is kind of, this cosmic figure with the band hammer just waiting to come down on you. So let's talk about the two terms. Because we use contracts all the time. We're very familiar with contracts, right? I'm sure every single one of you watching this has heard of a contract, probably been in a contract, right? Your phone, your car, your house. Maybe, if you're a kid, your parents with getting an allowance, right? Basically, a contract, we can sum it up in a few key ways. So a contract is first, it's an agreement between two parties, right? Where each party gets something, right? You do this for me, and then I do that for you, right? I do this for you, you give something to me. That's a contract, right? I pay you money, you give me a house. I do the chores, you give me an allowance, right? These are all the things that we're familiar with, concepts of contracts. There are other, we call them informal contracts because there's no written paperwork, but it's things like in a relationship where it's, hey, I'll cook, you do the dishes, right? That's a contract because it's an exchange of goods, basically. It's an exchange of services. It's one thing for another. So that's part one of a contract. It's, two people both getting something in exchange where if, I fail to deliver on my side of the contract, you don't have to deliver on yours. Contract. Another thing about contracts is they're typically temporary. They're short for the most part, right? I mean, even houses, right? But a contract is a set period of time. Maybe that's a better way of phrasing it. A house, 15, 30 years, right? A car, 3 to 4 years maybe, right? Depending on your car. A phone contract, 2 years, right? Maybe it's something smaller where it's a contract on a project where it's like a week, right? But it usually has a definitive endpoint or a definitive, you've fulfilled the criteria, so now the contract is over, right? That's a contract. So if you really think about our relationship with God in the terms of, do we have a contract or a covenant, right? Now the term covenant we're going to get to in a second here, but if it's a contract or a covenant, if we have a contract with God and that's our relationship with Him, that means that we have to do something for God for Him to do something for us, right? And it also means, by definition, that there's going to be an end period of the contract where we both walk apart, right? Where we split directions, where we go opposite ways. That's a contract. Now, if that's your view of your relationship with God, I am here to tell you that is not how it is. And that's a really good thing, because if it's just me on my own, I'm going to be breaking that contract because I can't live up to the standard I would need to, right? I can't live up to that perfect life. I can't live up to what being in a contract with God would be because I can't offer anything, right? I have nothing to bring to the table in this contract discussion, this negotiation, right? So now let's talk about covenant, because covenant is different. And covenant's a word that it's used in the Bible, but we don't really use it in culture, right? I mean, you don't walk down the street and see your best friend like, hey man, we in covenant. No, you don't really do that for the most part, right? Culture doesn't do that. So what is a covenant? A covenant, contrasting it with a contract. So a covenant, it's an agreement between two people again, but there's a key difference here. Whereas a contract is for, you do something for me, I'll do something for you. A covenant is a one-sided thing where it's one person saying, hey, because I love you, I'm going to do this regardless of what you do, right? That's a big difference. Regardless of what we do, we still get the benefit of it. That's pretty cool. The next thing is time, right? A contract, temporary with a fixed duration. A covenant is permanent. A covenant was meant to be, we are joining, right? Blood brothers, that's something that we do hear about a little bit. We don't use it very much, but we've heard it. That's basically more of a covenant relationship where it's like, we have now become one, so everything you have is mine, everything I have is yours, and we can't be separated. That's what a marriage is supposed to be. A marriage is supposed to be this covenant of two joining versus a contract of two parties entering into a civil union, right? Topic for a different day, but so covenant, right? Covenant is something that one party enters into for the benefit of the other without expecting something in return. 2, covenant is permanent. So now if you think of our relationship with God and what God did by sending Jesus, to die on the cross for our sins, God was entering into a covenant with us, right? And there are a bunch of covenants throughout the Bible. God made a covenant with Noah, right? Abraham made covenants. Isaac made, The point being, when God makes a covenant with us, God's doing it not for anything that we can do in return, not that we have anything that we can bring and offer to him, but purely because he loves us to the point where he says, regardless of you, regardless of your merit or anything you've got going on, I want to do this for you. That's a covenant. And then when we think about the duration of, it's amazing that God was doing this for us, right? That he's showing his love in this way. But it's going to end, right? If I mess up, it's going to be revoked, right? I mean, that's where our heads go. But here's the beauty of the covenant is permanent. So when God establishes that, and then all you have to do is just accept it, right? You can say, God, I don't want to be in this covenant with you, and get out. I mean, you can refuse to enter into this, but if you accept it, there is no, I screwed up, so the covenant's abolished. There is no, well, it's been 10 years, so the covenant is over. The covenant is permanent, and it's not based on what you do. It's not based on your actions. It's totally based on God's grace. So when you think of it in the context here of relationship, would you rather have a contract where it's based on your works, your merit, your capabilities, how good you can be? Or would you rather have a covenant where it's based on how good God is and how good he wants to be to you, regardless of whether you deserve it? So that's really the thought, is just that a lot of these things in the Bible, we just can just brush past. We can glaze over them. We can, say, oh yeah, that's just the old-timey language. But if we stop to understand it, the meaning and the message and the power behind it will touch you. Because if you change your view of being, God isn't a debt collector waiting for you to fail on a contract, but you change it to be, God is somebody who loves you so much that he said, regardless of what you do, I am still going to do this for you as long as you accept it. That's a big shift. Anyway, as always, we'll see you in the next one. Thank you very much. Love having you guys here. We'll talk to you soon.